Now we shift gears and move forward here on today's show with the top matchups to watch in this NFC title game between Philadelphia and San Francisco. And I want to start with the Eagles' offensive line pitted up against the Niners' defensive line. These are two of the top respective offensive and defensive lines in the National Football League. Star power on both of them, premier talent along each line. And really, when you think about the overall team success for Philadelphia and San Francisco this year, it is hinged on these two position groups. The Eagles' offensive line here, every member of it named to an All-Pro team, was a Pro Bowler or a Pro Bowl alternate. Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelce, Isaac Seumalo, Lane Johnson. Specifically with Kelce, one of the best centers of all time, Lane Johnson, the best right tackle in the game, Mailata, Dickerson, Maulers, so too is Isaac Seumalo. And the 49ers defensive line is good. It's versatile. They're led by who I think is going to be the defensive player of the year in Nick Bosa. Eric Armstead is a menace on the interior and can be a game destructor. Javon Kinlaw hasn't lived up to the expectations of being a former first-round pick, but is a very solid player. And Samson Ebukam, also a hybrid edge rusher who has some quickness. As for the latest on Charles Omenihu, arrested in San Jose by San Jose police because of suspicion of domestic violence. We'll continue to monitor that situation here on Eagles Now. He's a very good player who had a career-high 4.5 sacks this year. And this defensive line, it's going to have to stop this Eagles rushing attack, which rushed for nearly 270 yards against the Giants in the divisional round. Kenneth Gainwell popped off, 12 carries, 112. Miles Sanders, 17 for 90. Boston Scott, 6 for 32. All of them averaging more than 5 yards per carry. As a team, Philadelphia averaged more than 6 yards per carry. Eagles offensive line, the rushing attack, which Jalen Hurts should be included in this, going up against that Niners defensive line and defense, one of the key matchups to watch in this game coming up on Sunday. So who do you think has the edge here? I've got a lot of great responses in my Twitter mentions, on Instagram, and here in the comment section on Eagles Now, comparing Silicon Valley against South Philly. That's the matchup in this NFC title game. Who has the edge? CA for Silicon Valley, PA for South Philly. Have some fun with it. 49ers offensive line against the Eagles defensive line. Another matchup that is going to be key in this football game and could decide who wins and who loses. As for this 49ers offensive line, they're led, like Lane Johnson is the best right tackle potentially all time at right tackle. Trent Williams is in that conversation for the blind side of Brock Purdy at left tackle. Aaron Banks has given up just 1 sack all year. Jake Brendel is a very, very good center. Spencer Burford was drafted out of UTSA. He's been terrific at right guard. And Mike McGlinchey struggled a little bit against Micah Parsons, but is probably a top 10, top 15 tackle in the sport. Outside of Trent Williams, some questions along this offensive line, despite the Niners being well coached up on that front and in a scheme that certainly favors them. And a big matchup to watch is going to be Hassan Reddick against Mike McGlinchey. McGlinchey was horizontal to the football field, thrown to the ground with one arm by Micah Parsons. And Hassan Reddick is a lot like Micah Parsons from an athletic specimen standpoint. This year, fantastic in the regular season, 16 sacks, 40 hurries, 26 quarterback hits to go along with 5 forced fumbles. So 49ers offensive line, Eagles defensive line, another matchup to pinpoint. So too is Brandon Ayuk against James Bradberry. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, kind of a 1A, 1B at that wide receiver spot. So I think that Bradberry and Darius Slay will be covering both Deebo as well as Ayuk. Both can play outside and inside. So you might see Ayuk going up against Bradberry. And for Ayuk, he's slippery, he's fast, he's quick. He has some of the best footwork among all wide receivers in the NFL, really good hands, and can pick up yards after the catch. A career season for him, 78 catches on the year for more than 1,000 yards for the third-year man. Drafted in the first round, same draft as Jalen Reagor, by the way. He's ended up being a much better player with 8 touchdowns. And on top of Bradberry going up against Brandon Ayuk, he'll be matched up against Deebo as well, who's also so physical in the open field with breaking tackles, leads the league in yak since coming into the league as a second-round pick out of South Carolina. So with Ayuk going up against Bradberry, you would at least assume, right? It's a fantastic matchup. Who wins it? LGB for Let's Go Brandon, JB for James Bradberry. Let us know down in the comment section. Also with the Eagles, they have a loaded offense, and this 49ers secondary a little bit of a question mark. So A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith against Diamador Lenore and Charvarius Mooney Ward. Huge matchup in this game as well, because you have two different prototypes at wide receiver for Philadelphia. A.J. Brown, the closest thing that we've seen to Terrell Owens since T.O. He's physical, he's fast, he can break tackles. He also has his getaway speed. Given his stature and his size, really special. Nearly 1,500 yards in the regular season. Devontae Smith, like Brandon Ayuk, a very clean route runner. And like Brandon Ayuk, he's slippery. Tough to bring down because of his speed. Not as physical as Ayuk, but his quickness, his explosiveness is a special trait, certainly. And had 95 catches this year. Dallas Goedert picking up yards after the catch against that secondary for San Francisco. Keep an eye on that. Jimmy Ward could be lined up against Goedert. Another good matchup in this game. And then it's Nick Bosa against Lane Johnson. Best pure edge pass rusher in the NFL, in my opinion, against the best right tackle in the sport, a guy who's putting together a Hall of Fame type of trajectory in Lane Johnson. This is premier player, all-pro, future Hall of Famer against premier player, all-pro, future Hall of Famer. Two of the best at their crafts and two guys who pour so much into their pass blocking techniques in Lane Johnson, led by the best offensive line coach in the league in Jeff Stoutland, against a guy in Nick Bosa, who Mike McDaniel was quoted as doing pass rush moves on a water jug. That's how much he cares about his craft. And for Bosa, great year this year. I think he's the Defensive Player of the Year. 18.5 sacks. That was number one in the NFL, right ahead of Hassan Reddick. Pro Football Focus, according to those numbers, he had 90 pressures on the season, 48 quarterback hits, an overall Pro Football Focus grade of 90.9, a pass rush grade of 90.9 as well, so equal there. A run defense grade of 81.1, so he's not just an edge rusher. He can really stack the box like a Brandon Graham and be stout against the run. He had 39 stops, and I think he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. And him matching up against Lane Johnson, who's going to win the one-on-one duel? If you watch Baldy's breakdowns, he's probably gushing about this matchup because he's a big fan of both. And how could you not be? They're two potential GOATs. Lane Johnson, in the regular season 2022, 972 total snaps, 551 pass blocking snaps, only 6 penalties, 0 sacks allowed, goose egg for hits allowed on Jalen Hurts and Gardner Minshew with only 9 pressures. Cannot wait to see these two duke it out. So our next question, who wins in the trenches here? At that edge spot, NB for Nick Bosa, the man they call the Bear, or is it the Lane Train in Lane Johnson? Let us know once again. More matchups to monitor here. San Francisco has to have disciplined pass rush lanes against Jalen Hurts. San Francisco has really struggled against mobile quarterbacks this year. Philadelphia is no doubt thinking about that in their game planning for this matchup. If Hurts gets outside or if he breaks contain right up the middle, could be a long day for this Niners defense. Another coaching matchup that I want to talk about is Kyle Shanahan against Jonathan Gannon. The creativity and the offensive genius of Kyle Shanahan cooking against Jonathan Gannon, who has to prove, after a great performance against the Giants, we'll give him credit, and the Eagles do have some great defensive numbers. We'll talk about those, but he has to prove he can win a game against a premier offensive unit. Now's the time to do it for JG. It's the 49ers' number 1 rushing offense against the Eagles' number 15 rushing defense. I saw somebody chirp at me in the comment section saying, I took my like away because you said this Eagles rushing defense isn't good. They've been better since Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph. Yes, they have. But you can hit that thumbs up icon, like the video, and still admit that the Eagles' rushing defense does have some holes and questions. Yes, they were good against Saquon. Can they be good against Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and Kyle Shanahan? We'll see. Christian McCaffrey, very good this year. Nearly 2,000 all-purpose yards this season through the air and on the ground. This guy is a special, special talent who will line up at slot receiver. He'll line up in the split back. They'll run 21 personnel with 2 backs and a couple of tight ends. They'll play smash mouth football, and he's also freakish with the ball in his hands, regardless of how Kyle Shanahan gets it to him. And Elijah Mitchell, he did only play 5 games this year, but in 15 career games, he has about 1,200 rushing yards. He is a very good number 2 back. Also, Niners linebackers against the Eagles offensive system. This 49ers linebacking core is tremendous. It's the best in the league. They're led by Fred Warner, who also is an all-timer. As we continue to talk about a bunch of all-timers on both sidelines in this matchup. But Dre Greenlaw and Azeez Al-Shire are also very good. They have this unbelievable speed where they can range up and down the field vertically against the run, against the pass, but also sideline to sideline and be game records. And I want to talk for Fred Warner here for a few moments. This guy is a freak. This guy, since being a third-round pick out of BYU, has been an all-pro. He's the best off-ball linebacker in the sport, and we saw that against the Cowboys. This was a legacy game for Fred Warner against Dallas in the NFC divisional round, and this one play really stood out on top of him playing so well against the rush, being a menace behind the line of scrimmage and causing destruction there, but also this play against C.D. Lamb in pass coverage, as good as it gets. So you'll see number 54 here lined up inside the box, showing blitz at the line of scrimmage. C.D. Lamb, on the other hand, is in the slot. And keep in mind where we're at in this football game. It's 9-9, San Francisco and Dallas all tied up. The ball at the 40-yard line. This is a critical 3rd and 5 for the Cowboys to potentially put points on the board. So you see where Warner starts. You see where C.D. Lamb is, who had one of the best seasons for wide receiver production this year and is an extremely fast athlete. Dak Prescott snaps the ball out of the shotgun. You see where C.D. is. You see how Fred Warner recognizes, oh shoot, in the defensive scheme that we're in, I have to jet back to cover C.D. Lamb out of the slot. C.D. Lamb has the advantage. Look at how much ground Warner has to pick up from hash to hash, but also vertically here. And in the blink of an eye, Fred Warner, with what seemed like 4.4, 4.5 speed, given he plays linebacker, is able to go stride for stride with C.D. Lamb right down the seam here for the pass breakup and force Dallas to punt. Not many linebackers in the NFL can do this. In fact, I don't think there are any that can do it. And Fred Warner is going to have to make plays like this against C.D. Lamb come Sunday against Philadelphia, and they're loaded with offensive weaponry, is Philly. So Fred Warner going to have to come to play. As for this Niners defensive line depth chart, it's a very good one. So too is the Niners linebacking core. So the front seven here for the Eagles against the front seven against the Niners, and then vice versa, depending on how you flip it on both sides of the ball, is going to be one of the best matchups we've seen among front sevens in the NFL, because you also have to give credit to TJ Edwards, Kaiser White, and technically Hassan Reddick plays a little bit of edge, and he plays linebacker as well. So Eagles defensive line against the Eagles rushing attack, as I said, another key to this game, given what the Eagles were able to do on the ground, against the Giants. And you look at these numbers. We already showed them to you. We're not going to go through them all that much, but it's a good point to bring these rushing numbers up so that you can see them here because of this Eagles rushing offense against a very good Niners rushing defense. These are two of the top units in terms of running the football offensively for Philadelphia and stopping the run defensively for San Francisco. You look at the numbers here for the Niners. Yards per rush, they were 2 in the NFL, surrendering just over 3. Rushing yards per game, second ranked in the National Football League, under 78. Points per game, number 1, just over 16. Yards per game, number 1. Points per play, 0.27. This Eagles offense, it's been one of the most electric offenses we've seen in recent NFL memory. But this Niners defense has also been one of the best defenses we've seen in recent memory, which is really, really impressive considering it's a very pass-happy league. The Buccaneers got wiped by the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys offense was great in that game. In the wild card round, they couldn't do anything. Dallas offensively against this Niners defense. So who you got? PHI for the Eagles, SF for the San Francisco 49ers. Once again, get those game predictions into the comment section. And as always, appreciate you for being a part of the show. Don't forget to subscribe.